Malta Developers Association disassociates itself from a contractor linked to abandoned migrant worker. Malta did more than legally required to, Prime Minister says in Easter migrant case testimony. Union files data breach complaint after Education Ministry calls teachers partners over transfers to other schools. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening, Malta and Gozo. Yannick here, joined by Belle, Jong, and welcome to Lovin Daily. Today I have a special guest in the studio, Caroline Galea, the woman who yesterday found an injured abandoned migrant had been abandoned on the side of a road. She's going to be speaking to us about the shocking incident as well as giving us an update on his condition after visiting him in hospital. Before that though, today's top stories. Belle, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. The Malta Developers Association is disassociating itself from the contractor linked to the abandoned migrant worker that was found earlier today. The MDA says it condemns the incident and that it regrets how it puts the entire industry in a bad light. Basically, the migrant was found, you've probably heard this story, on the side of the road. His boss had offered to bring him to hospital, but he instead left him on the pavement. The boss of this migrant worker was Glenn Farrugia, a shareholder of the J&G Farrugia contractors, and he had not opted to register with the MDA before. The Chamber of Architects actually reiterated calls for contractors to be required to register before even operating at all. And I think the comment that says, "We regret how it puts the entire industry in a bad light," is probably the last concern the MDA should be worried about right now. Rather than putting the entire industry in a bad light. It's just a tragic and inhumane incident that occurred. What do you think, Yannick?
Yeah, so the idea of having contractors registered with the DMA actually came about after the incident in which Miriam Parch was killed a couple of years back. There were several building collapses, which the last of which saw the death of Miriam Parch, as we said, and after that, reform of the industry was promised, and one of the proposals put forward was for there to be a registry of contracts. There's a voluntary registry which was administered by the MDA, but endorsed by the government. It would appear that now this contractor hasn't even bothered to register with with the MDA. As you mentioned, there have been calls, for this registration to be handled by a government entity, and so far it hasn't happened. There have been calls, for more regulation in the industry. Hopefully, we'll see this happening quite soon. On to our next story. Prime Minister Roberta Bella this morning told the court that the government had done more than it was legally obliged to do when it ordered the Maltese fishing vessel to rescue a group of stranded migrants and return them to Libya. So the incident took place in April last year when a group of migrants was stranded in the Mediterranean. Malta obviously received word about the migrants. And it came at a time when Malta's ports were closed as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and Malta was refusing to let any migrants disembark. After the migrants were taken back to Libya, where they were detained, 56 of them filed a constitutional case against the Maltese authorities, accusing them of breaching their human rights. So the case continued today, and the Prime Minister took the witness stand to testify about the incident. He basically told the court that the Maltese government had worked night and day to find a way of rescuing the asylum seekers, despite not being legally obliged to. He recalled that the Maltese government had dispatched this private vessel to carry out the rescue and also to provide food, water and life jackets to the migrants. The Prime Minister during the sitting also criticized other EU member states which he accused of abandoning Malta. The next sitting, which will take place in November, will see members of the armed forces testify. The incident was also the subject of an inquiry. So we'll see what the next sitting has in store. What do you think?
I mean, the fact that he said that we did more than we were legally required to might be true. That doesn't mean we did more than was humanly required to. I think it's a vile comment, and it shows that in a situation like this, sending migrants back to Libya it's not enough. It shows how these politicians have no idea of what these migrants are going through, and even if it is the legal bare minimum, it's not the humane thing to do. Having said that, moving on to the next topic, the union, teachers' union filed a data complaint, a data breach complaint, after the Education Ministry calls teachers partners over transfers to other schools. This means that the union basically filed a formal complaint with the Data Protection Commissioner because the Ministry of Education has been calling teachers as well as the partners of teachers to tell them, some of them just hours before, just days before the start of the new school year, that they will be transferred to other schools. The union is obviously quite upset about this, saying that, you know, you can't prepare as a teacher if you're being called into a different school, different class, different region last minute. And the ministry shouldn't even have access to the teachers' partners' phone numbers, let alone use them in a case that is not an emergency. It's, according to the union, obviously showed that the ministry is in quite a distressed situation right now, having to transfer teachers last minute. And even students were left stranded on the first day of school without any teachers in certain cases, which also meant that peripatetic teachers, meaning that they are very specifically qualified teachers, teaching either arts, music, physical educations, these kind of subjects, they would be working for different schools. So in that case, it's quite a normal thing for them to travel between different schools and teach there. But now, in this case, these teachers were actually asked to teach classes in any subject, things they were not trained to do, things they shouldn't have to be doing. But the ministry did ask them if they could fill in gaps for regular teachers teaching ordinary school subjects, even though these teachers are clearly specified and trained for certain subjects. The lack in teachers right now partially comes because of the COVID-19 regulations, which force classes to be split up and students to stay in their bubbles, meaning that, of course, you will need more teachers. But the union says that it's a desperate situation and that teachers actually are considering resigning, and in case that happens, it will be an educational meltdown.
Yeah, it's on the one hand, one understands that obviously the fact that there are a number of COVID-19 measures requiring classes to be split up means that, you know, you will require more teachers. That being said, it seems that most of these issues should have been addressed before the eve of the start of schools, and the situation is clearly very problematic at the moment, and let's put it this way, not the best way for the scholastic year to have started. Animal rights activists are urging authorities to reconsider plans for a project that would see pigeons trapped in silos on roofs in various localities in order to control Malta's pigeon population. So as many of you know, pigeons are considered to be pests by many on the island, with various localities even authorizing regular cullings by allowing them to be shot. There have been calls for this barbaric practice to end for years now, and this new project by the local councils association aims to do just that. So the way it will work is that these silos will be installed on rooftops in various localities. Pigeons will fly into the silos where they'll be fed with contraceptives. It seems the idea is that the pigeons will then end up trapped in these silos and eventually die. While the plans have been welcomed by many, some others aren't too pressed. Activists from the online platform Vegan Prism, in fact, have called for the project the project being considered to be tweaked slightly, so that rather than having the pigeons killed, they are taken out, put into quarantine, and fed and cared for, and eventually exported to other countries through agreements the Maltese government would make with foreign governments. They're also recommending an educational campaign and greater enforcement to stop members of the public from feeding the pigeons. Obviously, it's in an ideal world, you know, no animals, no pigeons would be harmed. However, the proposal does seem to be a bit ambitious and not too feasible. I don't know what you think about it.
I think so too. Whether you like pigeons or not, I think it's quite a hassle to export them abroad. I was thinking, who would want to import pigeons in a case? The activists have said that this happens globally and that this is a common practice, so in that case it might be an option. But I'm not sure. It might be a better option compared to leaving pigeons. Well, first of all, with contraceptives, which give them some side effects and these things, but also to basically be starved to death. Maybe there will be a midway or some sort of, you know.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, to solve the pigeon problem. Another animal problem is that there are more sausages with nails in them found in the fields between Nashar and Mosta in the Talbay fields. These deadly sausages, they've been around before in Gozo. There have been other incidents where people found sausages which would have nails or screws inside, so that if an animal, like either a stray or someone's pet, would eat one of these sausages, it would obviously like harm them, potentially even kill them if it messes up their intestines. It's believed, and it seems quite obvious, that this was done with the intention to kill dogs that roam the fields, whether they are strays or not, as I said. And one of the dog owners in the area even said that it has become a nightmare to own a dog at this point. So yeah, that's it for us for now. Stay tuned for an interview with Caroline Galea, who is the woman that found the man who was abandoned and left on the side of the road with quite severe injuries, and helped him out, called the ambulance, the police. Yes, Yannick will be speaking to her soon, so stay tuned.
No, we are not going to prison. No, we are not going to prison.
So welcome back to Lovin Daily. We have Caroline with us. First of all, thank you very much for accepting to be interviewed today. So, I mean, as we've said, yesterday you were walking past, I guess, and you encountered this man lying on the floor. Explain to us a bit, describe to us a bit how it all happened.
Yeah, let me take a step back there because I think there's some mix-ups in the story. My friend and I were actually on a dog walk in Selmoon. So my friend Becky and I were driving back, and as we were driving towards my place in Mellieħa, so that she could drop me off, I saw a man lying down on the street and 3 people standing around him already. Okay. So I said to my friend Becky, stop the car, I've got water, and I just assumed that he was dehydrated. So I jumped out of the car, went over to them, and these 3 people started to explain to me that this man had actually been dumped there by his boss. So I immediately went into, I don't know what to call it, mother mode, and went down next to him and started to ask him more and more questions. And I noticed that he was quite panicked, obviously, because he had a bunch of strangers around him and he'd been dumped on the side of the street, but he kept saying, I don't want to die, help me, on repeat. So I went down next to him and I said to him, you're not alone, we're here, just keep breathing. But I wanted to check in with him and get more idea about the story, and he repeated it back to me, so I got it from him firsthand, that indeed he had been working on a site in Mellieħa, and he had fallen 2 stories, he guessed, 2 stories from the top of the building, and his boss had said to him he was going to take him to the ambulance. So they got into his van, they got him into the van, and on the way to what he thought was the ambulance, he chucked him out of the car and left him there to die.
And so from what I've understood, you've actually been to hospital to visit him. Like, how is he doing?
Yeah, so I tried to go and visit him yesterday, but he was still in A&E. Okay. So then this morning I went in to try and get some information about how he was doing and to bring in some food, because I know hospital food can be a bit touchy. And luckily they let me in, and as soon as he saw me he kind of teared up, and I said, "Do you remember who I am?" And he did, and it was quite shocking to see, really. He's got a back brace on and his arm in a cast, and he was sitting up near his hospital bed, and he had his food in front of him because they give them the food during the visiting hours. Yeah, he was very emotional. He kept thanking me, and I was just like, really no need to thank me. Any normal person would have done that, but I was more concerned about how we could help him next. And that's actually why I'm here right now, because obviously considering his situation, his kind of life is at stake at this point. I don't know if he's going to be deported. I don't know if he's going to be able to work. And that's his main concern as well. Because of his injuries, he's not actually able to make money now.
So are you, do you know exactly what injuries he's got?
Well, he was struggling to explain it to me as well. So I'm not sure how clear the doctors have been with him, but he's got his arm in a cast and he was going to be operated on after I visited him. So he's got broken bones in his arm, and then he kept saying to me that his back was broken. It's not his spine, because I asked him, is it your spine? So that's what I know.
And so you just mentioned that he's afraid of being deported. So I take it he doesn't. How long has he been in Malta? Do you have any? Do you know?
I don't have all the details, but my understanding is that he came to Malta a few months ago from Italy. And I think he has legal asylum there, but not in Malta. I think he was struggling to find work in Italy and came over here in the hopes of feeding his 2 children and his wife back home.
So since the incident, we've, at least here at Lovin Malta, we've had numerous people get in touch, ask how they can help. We've had lawyers offering their legal services. We've had business owners offering jobs, offering employment. Is there any way that people can actually contribute, that people can
Yes,
help?
I too have had a lot of people getting in touch with me, which is why I decided, okay, we need to start some sort of funding campaign. So that's in the works. It's with Victim Support Malta. So they're setting that up, and that's going to be launched tonight or at the latest tomorrow morning. So definitely start sending in your donations there. Also, I've had a number of lawyers contacting me, people who want to offer food and services and even a home to this person. So I do have his contact details, and I have passed that message on to him. But because he's still in a state of shock and very exhausted by the situation, I think we're kind of staging how we do this with him. I do have his number, and I do want to pass on these details, but I know there's an overwhelming amount of lawyers and people who want to help, and it might be a bit much for his phone.
So anyone interested can obviously get in touch with us, and kind of will relay any offers that are to you. I want to also to ask again, as in how you've interpreted, how you felt kind of when you saw him there, and how this whole experience, how you've processed it.
I think I'm still quite in shock about the whole situation, to be honest. I'm exhausted. I've been non-stop, to be honest. I don't know why it still surprises me when I come across these stories, but I think coming face to face with this man and witnessing his pain and his fear was, I think, what struck a chord with me, but also struck a chord with the Maltese public. And I think that's really important, and it's why this story needs to be pushed. But I think it's really important not to consider this as an isolated issue or an isolated event, this happens in Malta. This happens around the world, but this happens in Malta. And I think there is a national pride that kind of allows for this cognitive dissonance where we pretend that, oh, Maltese people aren't racist or Maltese people aren't. There is an underlying current that we need to confront, because Malta is a beautiful island and Maltese people are beautiful people. I'm Maltese, by the way. I know I have a British accent. I'm half Maltese, half Scottish, so I'm not saying this as an outsider. But I think it's really important that we confront that about ourselves as individuals. We confront our family members about this. As a society, we need to come together, because what is happening here is disgusting, and what Glenn has done is disgusting. And I'm not saying we would do that ourselves, but it is a reflection of a larger societal issue and a larger governmental issue. And there's a million things I could say about health and safety regulations on construction sites, but the undercurrent here is, how are we treating people who don't belong here, don't exist here? How are we treating our outsiders? I mean, really silly things, like I go to the local shops and I buy a box of grapes and they charge me €3 because they think I'm a foreigner.
No, in fact, especially when it comes to construction sites, I think it's a subject kind of we've discussed over and over. You know, as you said, these accidents happen regularly. They tend more often than not to involve a lot of foreign workers. Although, to be fair, it's also true of Maltese workers. In fact, we had a guy call in today and say, you know, he also worked for the same contractor and was fired after he fell one story while working as well. So it's the same, the same kind of story. So, like, I definitely agree. We definitely need more awareness, and we need health and safety regulations definitely to be enforced and to be enforced. I
think it's important to highlight that, yes, this isn't purely a race issue, right? So there is a problem with how construction workers are treated, but then also I think this is an opportunity for us to consider how we're treating migrants, refugees, illegal immigrants, whatever, and people of different skin tones, because that is an issue here. So there's many issues for us to look at, and I think hopefully this incident is going to keep the conversation going and raise the vibration of us as a society and a community.
Let's hope so. You said he's going to be operated. Do you intend to visit him again? Do you know when he expects to be discharged?
He didn't have that information for me, but I was actually going to visit him today until I got the call to come over here. I know that someone else is visiting him, the people who are setting up the fundraiser campaign. Sorry, my words are a bit funny. I'm quite tired. But I will be going to visit him again tomorrow morning. I know that there's a really lovely woman who's offering to cook for him because he doesn't like to eat meat. I'm actually a vegan, so it's really easy for me to provide the right food for him. So I'm going to go and take in food until this woman takes over, because she's really keen to provide food for him as well. But I just want to make sure that there's people by his side. While I was there this morning, his friend came in to say hello, so he's...
Certainly, please. I mean, if there's one positive aspect, I guess, from all of this, it has been that people, you know, have really stepped up and tried to offer whatever assistance they can. Thank you very much for coming in. That's it from us for today. Thank you very much for following, and have an evening full of lovin'.